want to ask you something, Anne, and I really want you to think before you answer it.
All right, bring it on.
Is there a version of yourself that you're still carrying around, still performing or maintaining, maybe even protecting that really in your bones that it just no longer fits you?
Yeah,
Tell me more.
I think the version of me that believes that she has to be the hardest working person in every room to deserve a seat at the table. I think it's the one who earned everything the hard way and still feels like after 25 years that I have to prove myself and prove what I've earned. Like still burning at it, still grinding, and just not giving myself credit for past accomplishments.
Still burning it. That's interesting. And how much energy do you think maintaining this version costs you?
More than I think I'd like to admit or acknowledge.
More than it should.
Definitely more than it should.
And that's this episode. Welcome to episode 4 of Midlife, Interrupted and Unfiltered. I'm Melissa.
And I'm Anne.
And today we're going to talk about the thing nobody tells you is the hardest part of reinvention.
And it's not starting something new.
It's actually letting go of something old.
It's burning it down. So let's go with episode 4.
Here's where we are in this conversation. And if you've all been with us since episode 1, welcome back. If it's your first episode, please go back and listen to episodes 1 through 3 because this builds on everything we've already laid down.
So quick recap for new listeners. Episode 2 was about starting over, that reinvention is possible in midlife, that plot twists are really where the story begins.
And episode 3 was about identity, who you are when the roles shift in your life, and the second act and how to consciously design it.
And this episode is the piece that connects those two conversations, because here's what we've noticed.
In my practice, and honestly, in our own lives,
women can see the second act. They can envision who they want to become. They have the inspiration and they have the vision, but
they're still stuck.
Still stuck.
Not because they don't know, not because they don't know where they're going, but because they haven't figured out how to release where they've been.
And that is the topic we're tackling today.
So the art, and I want to stress, this is an art of letting go, of consciously and intentionally releasing these identities or beliefs or relationships or these versions of you that no longer serve the woman you're becoming.
Which sounds so simple.
But it's actually one of the hardest things a human can do.
Melissa, since you're the coach and strategist here, why is it so hard? That's where we want to start.
Yeah, let's start there. So let's talk about why. So any reinvention that starts, a lot of times the content gets wrong. It just focuses almost entirely at the beginning, the new thing, the exciting launch, and the fresh start.
The plot twist.
The plot twist. And beginnings are really exciting. They deserve to be celebrated. But what no one ever talks about or acknowledges is what has to happen actually before the beginning, the ending, the release, the burning down, like you said, what was.
And why is the burning down of what was like so much harder and the difficult part?
Yeah, there's actually several reasons. The first is neurological. Our brains are literally wired to preserve this familiar identity, these memories, these neural pathways that we have are associated with who we've been, and they're deep down and well worn. Just like a muscle, the more you use it, it becomes stronger, just like these memories. And so changing them requires consistent effort, and that often triggers an actual threat response.
And so essentially, your brain perceives the change that you're envisioning, that you want to go through, is a threat.
Yes. And your brain actually can't distinguish between a physical threat and an identity threat. So to your nervous system, letting go of the familiar can feel like actual danger.
Which explains why it is, and it feels so viscerally scary, because it's not just emotional, but it's really physiological as well.
Exactly. And you have that neurological piece, but really the second thing is you have grief. We just don't talk about the grief of letting go. Even when the thing you're releasing was hurting you, even when you no longer fit in that thing, releasing something, a version of you, requires mourning. And our culture is so terrible at grief.
that we just want to skip over the grief and go right to the next phase.
We want to skip it. We want to move on, be positive, look forward. And then what gets left behind is this unprocessed grief that shows up later in our lives as either resistance, rage, unexplainable sadness at the most random moments.
Like at the 3 a.m. racing mind wake up.
Yes, exactly. Or the sudden crying or anger in the car. It's that grief that finds its way out of whether you process it intentionally or not.
So we have those two reasons, the basically the neurological component that's physical, then the grief component. So what is the third component of why this is so difficult to burn it down?
If you think about it, identity is relational. Who we are isn't just within ourselves, it's reflected back to those that are around us. We often tell our kids, you start to represent the company you keep and choose good friends. So when you change, the people in your life have to actually adjust to their understanding of who you are. And some of them, quite honestly, will resist that. Some of them, consciously or not, really want to work to keep the version of yourself that they're comfortable with that serve them.
Because basically your change, our change, anybody who's changing and evolving, it threatens the stability of those around them.
And if you change, what does that mean for them? If you decide to stop being the peacekeeper in the family, someone else has to deal with that conflict. What if you stop being the one who's always there when your friends need something and are no longer there? Someone else had to fill that gap. Your evolution requires adjustments from not just you, but everyone around you. And not everyone will be willing to make them with you.
So essentially, you're not just fighting your own brain, you're potentially fighting your entire social ecosystem.
Exactly. Which is why so many women get right to the edge of this reinvention and step back. And it's not because they can't do it. It's just because the combined weight of this neurological resistance, this unprocessed grief, and this social pressure, this relational piece was way more than they felt equipped to carry.
And it's not a weakness to feel that way. Everybody would.
Right. It's human. And it's exactly why having the right support, the right people in your corner, it's not really a luxury, it's a requirement.
I mean, let's be real. Not everybody has an Ian.
She said that, you guys. I couldn't. No, she's right.
I said it and I meant it, but I mean, not just me. Everybody needs somebody, and not everybody has somebody who will hold the vision for them of who they want to become, how they want to reinvent when they, in that moment in time, can't hold it themselves. And to have that support and somebody to hold the vision and walk through this with you really matters enormously.
Yeah. And why we've built this, right? And this community, why we want this movement, because every woman really deserves that support. And sometimes they either don't have it or they don't even know they need it.
Let's get specific and break this down of what we hold on to when we want to be burning things down and creating this plot twist, our reinvention, and why we're so reluctant to let things go. So let's get specific. And because I think when we talk about, quote, letting it go, close quote, that feels really.
We are going to glow when we let it go. I hear a song in my head.
Oh my gosh. For those of you who don't know, Melissa's a huge theater person.
Let it go.
Basically, letting it go feels abstract. So let's name the actual things and the things that women and we hold on to in midlife that just keep us stuck.
Okay. So let's name them. We like lists. So I think the first thing, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, is our professional identities. That title, the company, the role that defined you for years, maybe decades. Met women who've left both legal and corporate careers 5, 6, maybe 7 years ago and are still introducing them as the executive vice president of that company. Or I used to do this.
I used to be the director of such and such company. Oh, I manage a team of 50 people. That past identity that people still want to hold on to and still talk about, even if it's not their identity now, that past identity does all the heavy lifting in how they see themselves because that title was their safety net.
Exactly. It was proof that you were valuable, proof that you were capable, worthy of being taken seriously. And when you release that, you got to find some new evidence of your worth, or at least you think you do, which is so much harder and so much more important work.
So now the second thing, we talked about old professional identities that we hold on to. what is the second thing that women in midlife and who want to really reinvent themselves or go into that next chapter, what else do they hold on to?
I think maybe this in quotes good girl programming, right? We're programmed or grown up to be explicit or implicit, good women, good little girls. And this is so deep, it's bone deep. And we're supposed to be accommodating and pleasant and not make people uncomfortable and not take too much space up, putting others first, not asking for too much.
Not taking up too much space or being too assertive or really even too confident or too authentic.
And it's this programming in our society that often gets internalized at such a young age. And by midlife, most women can't even tell where it ends and where their actual self begins.
Because it was never just external pressure. That good girl programming then became an internal voice and part of really our own narrative.
Actually, almost an internal critic who sounds suspiciously like every authority figure that you've heard say, be smaller, be quieter, be less.
Be more polite, be the nice girl. So, as a trial attorney and somebody who spent my career being deliberately and professionally not so quiet and not so small, I can tell you that the voice doesn't go away regardless of your profession, regardless of your age. I think it just gets drowned out by intention and by practice.
Those are important words, intention and practice. Remember that. Okay, tell them about the third thing.
So the third thing is relationships we've outgrown. And this one's difficult and you can almost say it's painful because we're not talking about obvious toxic relationships. Those would be a lot easier to talk about getting rid of and that you've outgrown them. What we're talking about are the relationships that were genuinely good and they served a real purpose at a real time in your life, but that you've grown beyond that friendship. The friendship that was perfect for who you were at 30, but now feels like wearing clothes from a decade ago that might not fit anymore or might, let's say, be in style anymore.
Or maybe the marriage that started one way and really needs to become something different, or in some cases, it needs to end. Or some of the family dynamics that worked when you were playing a certain role, but now feel suffocating and unbearable. And you could even go back to some of those work relationships that were about who you were when you were in that title role.
And I think that the guilt that everybody feels of outgrowing someone is real.
Yeah, it's crushing because you love them. You still love them. And loving someone and knowing you've grown apart, those things can exist at the same time, but it's so hard.
So hard for sure. And then the fourth thing, basically, what we're holding on to is old professional identities, that good girl programming, those relationships that we've outgrown and probably should move on from. And that fourth thing that we're holding on to is what?
It's the abandoned dreams. This one is subtle because most people, most women made peace or think they made peace with the dreams that they set aside, the career they didn't pursue, or maybe the creative life they traded in for practical stability. Maybe the passion they told themselves, oh, that's just a hobby. I can't do that for a living.
That, oh, I'm fine with it. I'm fine. I never did that. I'm fine. I never pursued that when it isn't entirely true at their core being.
Exactly. And it's in midlife, I think that those dreams have a way of whispering back. Then they get a little louder and then they get insistent because now we know time's finite and the window for someday is narrowing. And this abandoned dream is knocking again because, it's now or never.
And holding on to that story that you made peace with abandoning that dream or that passion that you wanted to pursue, what does that do?
That keeps you from hearing the knock, but you're not letting that knock in.
Yeah. So the fifth thing is really what we need to let go of because it's something we're holding on to is the belief that you're only as valuable as what you produce. And this kind of ties back into how we define ourselves with a career role or something. But this feeling or the belief that you're only as valuable as what you produce. This is something that is really difficult and doesn't seem to be named, but almost everybody carries that internalized productivity imperative, that idea that your worth is directly tied to your output, your usefulness, your contributions to others, and maybe even your contributions financially that can be monetized.
I know. And think about it. In midlife, this can become, oh my gosh, what happens to my value when the children need me less? Or when my career slows down? Or when my body needs a new knee or a new hip and can't keep up with the pace I've always kept? It's this fear, this terror underneath the busyness of women. And if I stop producing, stop doing, stop being useful, who am I? And do I actually matter?
Yeah, I felt that, and not just when I hit my hip replacement a year or more ago.
Yes, for those of you who don't know, and you would never know. I think we've all felt that. And releasing it and releasing the idea that your worth is contingent on your output is one of the most radical and empowering and necessary acts of midlife.
Of realizing that you're not what you produce at all.
And you're not your title, you're not your roles, you're not your usefulness to other people. You're human and you have worth. And that's completely independent of what you do.
So say that again, because that really is a good take home and something that everybody should ponder on.
Yes. Your worth exists completely independent of what you do. It was there before the career, before the children, before the achievements, and it will be there after.
And that one lands, it lands well, but a little different every time.
Mhm.
So let's get a little personal here.
Oh boy, here we go.
All right. What did you burn down now? Not the career story. We told that one. What's the thing that you usually don't talk about, like a part of your identity that you've burned down is part of your transformation?
Yeah. And this one is, I don't usually talk about this one, but it is hard. And I think for anyone that knows me that's listening, would you like, really? I think it's the identity of being the one who has it all together.
What do you mean by that? And specify about how that is true to your personal life, your professional life.
I mean, professionally, I think that identity was built around helping teams and people individually through hard things. That means there's not always a conscious pressure to appear to have navigated your own hard things successfully. So I was the expert. And to be the example, to be the proof that work that we were doing actually works, and I didn't need help.
So the helper who didn't need or doesn't need help.
Yeah, the helper who doesn't need help. And I held that identity for a really long time, even in my formative years. When I think back in like grade and elementary school, I was always the friend that people would come to if they needed advice or they had something wrong and needed help and they were afraid to tell their parents, or a stranger on a plane would tell me their life story. And I don't know why, but that version of whatever people saw was that I think, oh, she's on top of it. She's approachable. She's okay. And I processed everything cleanly and just moved forward with grace. And I never burdened other people with internally my own mess that we all have something or something's going on. But I didn't do it because I was the one who was supposed to help with everyone else.
Well, first of all, that's exhausting. And then what's the cost of that? Like, what was the cost of that to you?
I felt loneliness, and I was an only child in my younger years, so I tend to have very close friendships. But even with that, I didn't want to burden anyone in my family because I wanted to be strong because I saw strong women. When you perform okay, even of the people that love you, you create a distance. But when you perform great and people see that you're doing well and you don't need anything, you don't disappoint anyone.
So then when did you start letting go that narrative and that identity of that you were the helper who didn't need help?
I think in therapy. Honestly, yes. It was in therapy, and it was the therapist who went to therapy. You hurt me. I can't recommend it strongly enough for any person. You don't have to have anything but normal need for self-care to go to therapy. But I think that's when I started to feel safe to think out loud
And
and
kind of
share it.
start shedding some of that
Mhm.
identity. So the therapist recommends therapy, and not to knock therapy at all. I think it's so healthy in today's society that the majority of people really advocate for it. And if you tell somebody that you have a counselor or therapist, they're so supportive and
Mhm.
say more often than not, oh, me too. It's definitely not something to be ashamed of. So the therapist recommends therapy.
Yep. But I think, and I have had many different therapists in my life. I think it was in my probably early 20s that I really started doing the work. But it was there that I really started practicing sitting with not being okay in a room with another person, being uncertain, maybe being lost, maybe needing help finding the answer to what to do with a relationship here or there. But I was the one who actually needed something instead of being the one who was giving.
And what did that feel like when you got to this point where you ultimately realized that that wasn't serving you of basically the identity of the person who doesn't need any help?
Yeah, almost like burning down this building that I've spent years carefully constructing and artistically creating. And eventually, it also felt like I was coming home to my true self.
And there she is.
There she is. Okay, enough about me. It's your turn. I want the real answer from you.
I think probably for me, like having armor and surrounding myself with armor.
Tell 'em what you mean by armor.
I wish it were just like a cool night suit that I would wear around, nice and shiny.
That's Halloween next year.
But I think when you spend your career like I did for the past 25 years, basically in an adversarial process all the time in courtrooms and depositions, negotiations, and you're always working on behalf of the little guy in a David and Goliath
Mhm.
situation. You have to put on some pretty thick armor, not just to fight the battle on behalf of the little guy, but also just to function in terms of what you deal with on a day to day basis.
And it worked, right?
It did, and it really does work brilliantly sometimes, but other times the problem is that you don't know when to take the armor off because you built up this armor to protect you emotionally too from some of the things you're dealing with in the legal system, and it comes home with you, and then you might be sitting across from your family at dinner or next to your husband or with your friends, and you just still have this kind of shield around you that doesn't fully let people in.
So let me get this straight. So the weapon, this armor that protected you in your work context, it actually became the wall that separated you and another.
Yeah. So really the weapon that protected me was a weapon that I was essentially using against myself by creating a barrier between me and those who I genuinely care about. And I really didn't see it until
Until what?
I I think somebody close to me just said, "Hey, you can be tough, you can fight anything, but you don't have to fight. I'm not asking you to fight. Just be present." And honestly, you don't always have to be right. You don't have to advocate your position. Just be. Just be present and be yourself.
Wow.
And I realized that I didn't entirely know how to do that, like to just be somewhere without constantly looking for a counter position or a threat or how trying to think 10 steps ahead of what somebody else was going to do and how I was going to respond without preparing an argument and without holding any position and just be.
So now with that knowledge, what are you doing about it?
I think I'm being more deliberate in situations, learning, being more present. And it's a slow process. I'm definitely not perfect at it. But I think just really being in tune with the mind body connection and being present. And I do think, and I know we joked about it at the intro of being
Hmm.
a Pilates instructor, but I do think physical activity and Pilates and other things really require that mind body connection, you being present. And I think that translates then of outside the Pilates studio, outside the workout room, of just knowing that you require a presence and a softness and an intention and attention to how your body's feeling and the sensation of a threat versus relaxation. So I guess you could say I'm learning a softness and a strength which is really weird to think about those coexisting
Wow. A softness and a strength are not opposites. They can coexist. That might be the most important thing you've said on this podcast, Anne.
because you say all the important stuff. Let's be real. That's why.
Let's not peak too early.
All right.
So we got to the softness and strength are not opposites. Everyone write that down. And I think I'm going to make a little affirmation in my calendar on that. So what else?
Okay. So I guess too that like the armor doesn't define me. It's not who I am. It's something that I essentially surrounded myself with to be able to deal with things I had to deal with and essentially survive in a pretty tough career and environment. And day by day, I think I'm learning slowly and one layer at a time to peel it back and to know that I'm safe enough in safe environments to do it, that I don't have to be tough and advocating and thinking of how I'm going to argue about something and just being and peeling back those layers.
I think if that's not burning it down, what is? That's totally burning it down, like we said. And it's not dramatic. It's you didn't do it all at once. You layer by layer.
And it was slow burn. Burned it down by a slow
Like Pilates. Like Pilates. All right. Let's move on. There's an important distinction we need to make now because burning it down can be misread.
Burning it down versus blowing it up. So when you say burning it down, it can sound like you're really blowing up your life.
And we are absolutely not saying blow up your life.
So there's a critical difference between burning it down and blowing it up.
Burning it down, it's actually conscious, intentional, deliberate. It's the controlled release of what no longer is serving you.
Blowing it up is reactive, it's impulsive. It's what happens when the pressure's been building for so long that something finally has to give and it finally explodes. And as a result of that reactive blowing up, there's collateral damage.
Yep, everywhere. And here's the thing in midlife, this implosion is real. I see it. Women who've been suppressing their authentic selves for decades, and then one day something snaps. They quit their job without a plan. They end a marriage overnight. They maybe make a dramatic gesture that feels like freedom in the moment, but actually is just accumulated pressure finding a release valve.
And sometimes those explosions lead somewhere good, but often they don't.
They often leave a lot of wreckage, and the woman then has to rebuild not just her identity, but her relationships and entire life.
And really, you and I both, as I just said, I don't want to advocate all the time, are advocating and saying how important it is that you burn it down. And this is about yourself and doing things intentionally versus blowing it up. So how would one know? How do we know which one is going on?
And that's a great question. And there are a few ways to tell, right? And the first is asking yourself some questions and reflecting inward. And I guess the first thing is to ask yourself, am I moving towards something or am I just running away from something?
And if you're moving away or running away from something, then you're doing something and moving away from it because you're running away from pain or you're running away from a stress versus moving towards something. And maybe those two things can look identical from the outside, right?
Right. They can, but they feel completely different inside. So think about it. I'm running away from this relationship. It's frantic. There's this, I got to get out, a desperation, and you want to seek relief, which makes sense. But when you're running towards something, it's pulling you. And even when it's scary, there's this sense of like rightness to it.
That like intuitive feeling that it's a good thing.
Yeah.
So then when you ask yourself that first question, are you moving towards something or away from something? What then is the follow-up question? What's your second question?
So then I would probably ask, now, are you acting from clarity or crisis? Because when you're in crisis, the pain is acute. The emotions are overwhelming and you want to react and just fix it. It's not the time to make a permanent decision. It's just like it's not the time to send an email when you're mad. You have to sit on it for 24 hours at work. And this is the time really to sit or force yourself to sit with the feelings and the emotions and get support and wait for that clarity to come before you act and do something you may someday regret.
And when we're talking about acting from clarity or from crisis, clarity doesn't, though, always mean that you have 100% certainty. you can make still a clear decision and still be scared and not have 100% certainty that you're moving in the right direction.
Exactly. We talked about values, but it's being connected to those values and being connected to your decision of when you make an action that it's meeting those values. And crisis is more about being disconnected from everything except the need for this pain to stop and get away from the crisis.
And so, really, if it's a crisis, if you're acting in a crisis mode, you're probably disconnected from your internal beliefs and values.
I tend to think so. And in many cases, yes, I can't say for certain 100%. The goal is to live those values, right? And keep them.
Close to you and operate out of clarity about being connected to your values. So you have those two questions about moving towards something or away from something. Are you acting out of clarity or out of crisis? And then what's the third question?
And then this is a hard one because once you figure that out, you have to ask yourself if you've grieved what you're actually releasing. This is the one that people skip, right? It's the one people want to deal with. They don't want to deal with the feelings, they don't want to deal with the grief, but it matters the most. If you haven't, if you're going to change something and reinventing yourself, and if you haven't allowed yourself to actually mourn what you're letting go and honor it, acknowledge it, repeat what it gave you, even if it cost you to yourself, then you haven't released it. You've just moved it to the side.
And if you move it to the side and you don't process that of what you're releasing, then it's going to show up again.
It will. And the unprocessed releases, they always show up, and it's usually in a new chapter and at the worst possible time. And I'd say this is an area that often comes up in my practice, and we get to work through with people.
So the work of burning it down, even if it's a slow burn, it requires like sitting in the grief, really sitting with something and honoring and acknowledging and mourning whatever it is that you're releasing that no longer serves you.
Exactly. And that grief, and that's the fire. You can't bypass it. You can only move through it.
So let's talk about you go through that process and you go through burning it down and releasing things that no longer serve you because it's all part of the ultimate goal of what comes out of the ashes. So let's talk about that. You sit with that fire for a while. You sit in a fire, you let things burn, whether it's a small, slow burn or not a crisis burn, but a quicker burn.
I'm getting hot talking about the fire.
So let's talk about what comes after. What comes after the burn?
What does the burn birth? What's born in the ashes?
Because we don't want anybody listening to think that this episode is just about burning things down and about loss, about releasing and grieving and letting go. Because when you do all that, there's something absolutely extraordinary on the other side. And the reason why you go through the releasing and the grieving and the letting go. What is that on the other side?
There absolutely is. And I often like to use this metaphor of the phoenix because this is, and I know it gets overused, everybody, but I think this is a very good metaphor for what we're talking about.
And I think even though it's overused, I think it is an absolutely awesome metaphor. And I think that's why it does get overused because you can totally envision it too, the phoenix rising.
And there's something true about that center of it. That what rises from the burning is not just the old thing restored, it's something new, something that couldn't have existed without that fire.
Which is just an awesome thought. It really is. And it makes the work and the grief all worth it. What have you seen? Can you give us some examples without, I know, and as a lawyer, HIPAA.
I know.
So can you just give us some basic examples of what you've seen in your clientele of what has been born from the ashes?
It's so interesting, particularly with women who are going through a breakup or a divorce or something and have lived for others. I think this is where I see it the most. And it's the thing that comes out is this authenticity, right? This version of this woman that emerges after she's released performing, released accepting, maybe not being treated right, releasing this programming of the armor and protecting herself. And all of a sudden, this beautiful, authentic woman comes out and she's more herself than she's ever been. And there's this beautiful quality to this that's magnetic, and you can feel that energy, and you can people respond to those people that come out of the burning immediately.
And I think part of that's probably because somebody being truly authentic is so rare to be
It's
their true authentic self.
especially today, right? It's so rare. We're just surrounded by performance. We are saturated with curated versions of people on social media. When someone shows up genuinely, completely themselves, it's almost disarming in the best possible way.
That's so true. And you have the woman who shows up now as her authentic self after the burn, and she's the phoenix that rose from the ashes. What else have you seen when somebody goes through this process who you've worked with and comes out the other side?
Yeah. And I know we've talked about values before, but I think it's that clarity, the clarity of I've done the work and I've burned down these false identities. And now I have a clarity about who I am and what I want and what I value and what I won't tolerate anymore. And they never had that before. And that noise gets quiet. And in that quiet of letting go of that, women can finally hear themselves and like themselves and being in that, even in that presence with themselves.
And I think we've all experienced that. I think I've gained that clarity and experienced that.
Tell them.
I think when I started layer by layer and imperfectly and slowly peeling back those layers of armor, I started to hear things that maybe I'd been drowning out, including what I actually wanted. And in terms of both my professional life and my personal life, and what mattered to me that had nothing to do with really career and winning and fighting. So I think that's where I experienced it.
And what did you hear?
I think that I wanted to be known, but not known reputation wise or accolades or anything. I, not to like be self promoting, but I know I already have the respect and accolades in my professional career. And I know I have the respect of people who know me, but I think it was just to be better known by the people who actually matter to me and who I really care about. And I don't think I could be known completely like with armor around.
It's almost like you had to burn that armor to let people in.
Yeah, burn up some of that armor layer by layer to let people in, but also to let myself out and put myself out there that of making those connections.
And this is actually, exactly what gets born in the ashes, the self that was always there, just waiting to be let out.
And what I think we want everyone listening to this to know is that what's on the other side of that burning is worth the fire. That phoenix that's going to rise is going to come out of the ashes if you do the work.
And it's worth every uncomfortable moment of release, really. Every grief you have to sit with, every familiar identity you have to put down. And there's no shame in asking to sit with someone to do that and ask for help to do that. You don't have to do it all yourself.
And really, what's waiting for you on the other side of all this is you.
Yep, you're the whole you, the one who's been patiently waiting, or maybe not patiently if you're me, for you to come home. Okay, enough getting sappy and serious. It's about Phoenix. I'm going to have dreams about the bird tonight.
At least it's a pretty bird.
It is a beautiful bird. It's actually, yes, it's beautiful. Let's go to real tools because, like we say, we always deliver real tools.
And we have a framework. Melissa always has her framework. So let's hear the framework for this process.
So we're going to have 4 things. And the first one, and this is what I call kind of the 4-step release. It's practicing the 4-step release. And I want to be honest with you all. This isn't a one-time exercise. It's an ongoing practice and something you're going to need to return to throughout this second act of your life.
So start with step 1. What is it?
Looking at the identities that you have, the identity inventory. So if you get a journal and you make 3 lists, here's what it's going to say. List 1 or column 1, what I'm keeping. These are the parts of your identity that are genuinely yours. They align to your values. They light you up. They give you energy. They represent the truest version of you, and they come with you. And then the second column, list two, is what I'm evolving. And these are the parts that served you, but maybe need to change shape. Maybe the drive and ambition stay with you, but the need to prove yourself releases. Maybe the caretaking stays, but you're no longer a martyr to that. They get transformed, they don't get discarded. And list three, or column three, is what I'm releasing. These are the identities, or maybe the roles, the beliefs, or this version of yourself that don't fit anymore. They never were really yours, and you may been maintaining them out of habit or fear or maybe obligation. These are the things that get put down.
And am I right that you do all this with intention? The releasing is with intention. You're not abandoning it. You're consciously putting it down, and it's coming from a true, authentic place, and you know that it's not serving you anymore, and that's what needs to be released.
The intention absolutely matters. And that's the difference between leaving something and releasing it.
So we have step one of the identity inventory, and what's step two?
Step two is the thank you and goodbye. We won't say the Irish goodbye, but it's the thank you and goodbye for everything on your release list. Every identity, every belief, that version that you're letting go, it a thank you note. Like, seriously.
That sounds a little bit out there, weird. So tell them why that works, because I don't know that I'm convinced now.
Well, it does sound a little weird, but think about it. Everything you're releasing served you at some point. The armor and protected you when you needed protection. The have it all together identity gave me a sense of control when other things in my life felt chaotic. The good girl helped many women navigate environments where being difficult or being bold had real consequences.
And so those identities or their beliefs or versions of themselves, they were never mistakes. They were essentially just survival strategies.
Exactly. Yeah. They were wisdom for the women you were then. And thank you. Thank you for getting me here. Thank you for teaching me this. I don't need you the same way anymore. So see ya. Bye.
And then you actually let go, like emotionally let it go.
You actually let it go. And there are ways you can do this. You can crumple up the paper and throw it into a fire. You can throw it into a lake, or you can rip it up and shred it. There's so many different ways you can actually physically get rid of it.
So step one, the identity inventory with the three lists. Step two, the thank you and goodbye notes or practice. And step three is what?
This is looking at the gap, like practicing looking at what you released and when you release this identity belief role, there's a gap. So there's that space. And here's where most people panic immediately, actually, and try to fill it just with anything.
Because having that void or that emptiness feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's emptiness or silence is often terrifying to most people. But the gap, it's not empty. It's actually potential. It's the space in which this new thing is going to grow.
So you basically have to tolerate the not knowing and leave that emptiness open for what's growing in there.
Right. You have to get comfortable, or at least willing to be uncomfortable in this in-between gap state. So think about this corporate executive identity. And if you release that, you haven't yet fully become the entrepreneur, but the woman will get there. They have to believe in their potential, or someone who's released the armor like yourself, but you haven't maybe figured out what softness feels like fully to you.
So it's like the caterpillar before it's become a butterfly, and it's in the chrysalis.
Exactly. It's in the chrysalis, which is this in-between stage of transformation. Because let's face it, the caterpillar doesn't gradually grow wings. It actually dissolves and becomes completely formless before it reorganizes into what we see as beautiful butterflies.
Okay, you're going to think I'm the biggest airhead. I honestly never knew that before. So anyway, I really did.
I love
that just
butterfly.
came out. Butterfly. But in any event, to your point, so you have to basically dissolve and break down before you can become the full person you were meant to be.
And that dissolving, it's not a failure, it's a process, and you have to trust it. And by the way, I'm going to get you a butterfly thing where you can put some caterpillars in and watch them form. It's going to be your new gift.
I'll pass.
All right.
Step 4.
Step 4 is the courageous first act. You've done all these things, as Anne said. You get it. You've done the first 3, and now you did the inventory, the goodbyes. You're sitting in this gap, and there's just one thing you need to do. Just one teeny, teeny little thing. Take action. One step forward that expresses the woman you're becoming rather than the woman that you were.
So just one action item.
Exactly. Not the whole second act, not the big reveal. It's like one small, brave, intentional thing that's aligned with your new identity that isn't going to overwhelm you rather than the old one.
For me, maybe it was walking into that first Pilates teacher training class. That was totally outside my comfort zone, but something that I really wanted to do and felt true and authentic to me.
Absolutely. And maybe for me, it was sending that first email from my human group account.
And then that one act, then that's like that spark that starts the second act.
And here's what's magic. This action actually creates identity. You don't have to wait to feel like this new version of yourself is all perfect and you just have to come out like a big reveal. As you're starting to act like her, the acting turns into becoming.
So when you start walking the walk and talking the talk, you're embracing that identity of who you truly are and what you're evolving into. So you're basically acting your way into the identity.
Absolutely. Every time.
So let's talk about the closing fire. And I want to say something before we get to the action item.
Of course you do. What do you want to say?
I don't know that I always get a last word. I don't think I ever did with you. But anyway, despite spending 25 years in the courtroom, watching people who were wronged and were fighting for what they deserved, I think the women who win aren't always the ones who fight the hardest. A lot of times, I think they're the ones who fight the truest and who know themselves so completely that nothing can shake them from who they are and that they've done the real hard internal work so that when they walk into a room, any room, they're fully, completely, undeniably themselves. And I think with that brings a lot of confidence in their presence and what they're advocating for.
And that's what the burning it down builds.
That's what it builds. And the woman can't be shaken or moved because she knows who she is. The woman who doesn't need any armor because she's built something stronger, which is her own unshakable sense of self.
Like you don't get the woman without the fire.
You don't get the woman without the fire.
So if you're in the fire right now, those of you listening out there, or you're in the middle of releasing something in your life and it really hurts more than you expected,
You're not doing anything wrong and it's all totally normal, right?
you're doing it exactly right.
Because the fire is the work.
Yep. The fire's the work.
Time for action item. Melissa loves the action items in her practice and in this podcast. So your action item for episode 4, and this one, we want you to make time for real time, not just like 5 minutes of rushing it through.
Right. And put it in your calendar this week. Like it's the most important meeting you have because it might be, and it's with yourself.
So the step 1 action item is doing that inventory list, taking that identity inventory, making those 3 lists or columns of what you're keeping, what you're evolving, and what you're releasing. And don't overthink it. Just write. Let it be honest. Let it be quick. Let it be messy.
Yep. And then step 2, pick one thing from that release, just one, write a thank you note and say goodbye. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be neat. It just has to be honest.
And in that thank you note and goodbye note, make sure you acknowledge that it served its purpose, thanking it for what it gave you, and then you release it.
Yep. And then your third step is you're going to identify one courageous small act, the one small thing you can do this week as an expression of who you're becoming versus who you were.
And not the whole second act, just that first step in walking the walk and talk.
And then do it. I believe in you and believes in you this week before the next episode drops.
And then share it with us. Share your action items.
Yes, on Instagram at the.interruption, or you can email us at interrupt@midlifeiu.com. I want to know, Anne wants to know, what did you burn down? What was that first act? And when you do share it, it might be exactly what someone else in this community needs to hear to take their first step.
Because this community is built on those stories and supporting and being cheerleaders for one another.
It really is.
Okay, so that's episode 4, Burning It Down.
We went to some real hot places today.
We really did.
So let's leave you with this.
So the burning is not the end of your story.
It's the beginning of the truest, most authentic version of it.
And the identities that you're releasing are not failures.
Nope, they're chapters that serve their purpose.
And that gap, that uncomfortable, disorienting, in-between phase, it is not emptiness.
Nope, it's potential.
And the woman who rises from this
She was always in there.
and was just waiting for you to let her out.
So, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts because it helps other women find their way to this conversation.
And if this episode cracked something open for you or lit a fire, pun intended, share it and with a friend who's in the middle of her own burning, or somebody who needs to hear that what she's feeling is normal and it's not destructive.
No, it's transformation. So next week, what are we talking about, Anne?
We are talking about that when you change and everything changes, what happens to your relationships when you're reinventing yourself and when you do reinvent yourself.
So until then, keep interrupting the narratives that no longer serve you.
And keep burning down what needs to go.
And stay unfiltered. See you next week.